Hey role players, it's the Bard here, welcome back to the corner. So in the past I've given the assassin archetype some stick for not being as good as it could be, but pointing it out and saying why it's no good doesn't really do anyone any favours. Of course we could do something about it, and maybe that could help everybody. So your bonus proficiencies are going to be for your disguise kit and for your poisonous kit. Now I wouldn't really recommend poison for a melee assassin. It's not too bad if you're going to go with a ranged assassin, as we're going to cover later. But the poison doesn't tend to act very quickly. Most poisons are slow over time things. So they're not going to be of a great amount of benefit for people in melee. Although just having it as an extra thing you can add, you can't really complain about. But don't rely on it to do everything you need it to in a quick fight. So next up for your Roguish Archetype is Assassinate. It's the only ability you care about in this archetype. Infiltration Expertise, you don't care about. Imposter, you don't care about. And Death Strike is just too many levels away. So we're going to go with a minimum of 3 levels of Rogue, a minimum of 3 levels of Fighter, and about 5 levels of Ranger. My preference for Ranger over Fighter in this scenario is that you're going to get access to spells as well, and this will help to increase damage, because what you're going to want to do is get as much damage as you can in the initial rounds. So this build relies on surprise, because let's be fair, Assassin in general relies completely on surprise, and the Assassinate ability relies primarily on surprise. However, it's not quite strong enough for a single attack. So what we're going for here is to get as many attacks in a round as we can. So the key abilities you want for your rogue are obviously going to be Assassinate and Sneak Attack, since that's the build that we're trying to work on. The important things as a fighter that you're going to need are Action Surge and Sweeping Attack, and what you get as a ranger that you'll need will be your Extra Attack, your Hex Spell, 2 Weapon Fighting, and the Horde Breaker ability. So you're looking at your 2 attacks baseline, an additional attack for 2 weapon fighting, an additional attack for your action surge, and an additional attack from Horde Breaker, bringing you up to a grand total of 5 in a round. The slight drawback to this is that you're basically putting all your eggs in one basket. But what you kind of need to think about is, well, all of these attacks that I'm going to get in this first round of surprise are going to have the benefit of Assassinate. Every one of them is going to be a critical hit, because as soon as I strike from surprise, every attack that happens is automatically guaranteed a critical, and of course you're very likely to hit with all of those attacks, because what you're also getting is advantage against your surprise target. In addition to this, if you're looking for a feat for your character, you might be forgiven for thinking that the dual weapon fighting feat is probably the way to go, and I can see why people might think that. The bonus to defense is nice and the quick draw is nice, but it doesn't really matter, because you're not going to be hanging around long enough for it to come into effect. The idea is you want to get in, you want to strike your opponent down, and then you want to get out of dodge as fast as you can. Of course it's not a completely superfluous feat. It might be worth grabbing it just so that you can have a rapier in each hand. You'll be able to dish out some really massive criticals, because rapiers deal essentially twice as much damage as daggers do. So if you can afford it, grab it, but if not, then I would go with something else. So what I would probably say is you want to go for Alert, because once you've had your surprise round, the best that you can offer has been used up. After that, if you're fast enough and you can go before they get to act, you're going to get advantage on all your attacks again. So what's going to happen then is you're going to get a much higher chance of hitting on your actual first round of combat, as well as the fact that you're going to be able to possibly get a critical hit with that, many possible 20s being rolled. And then you want to use your cunning action to withdraw from that combat scenario, get into a better position where you're not going to be flanked, and allow some extra bonuses for your teammates so that they can then step up and on their initiative get some bonuses as well. So I would say Alert all the way. So here's an example of how this might go down. Your central target is going to be the target of your hex. However, this is not going to be the main target of your aggression. The first thing you're going to want to do is take one of the flanking characters and strike at them. Then you can use your Hordebreaker and move on to your central opponent. The reason you want to do it this way is because if your sneak attack takes out the first guy and he's the one you've hexed, then you lose the hex for the rest of the round. So what you're going to do is attack the flanking targets, and then you're going to use your sweeping attack to sweep across to the hexed target. From there, all those damage dice get doubled up because it still counts as an assassinate move. So I'm going to try to articulate my point a little bit better so that you can hopefully understand what it is I'm, babbling on about. So your assassin is getting ready to pounce. The first thing you do from your hidden position is to cast Hex. We'll illustrate this with a color hue. From there, you want to move into position and get ready to start your surprise round. As soon as the surprise round begins, you go for one of the flanking targets. You strike at them. Use your sneak attack if you want, it's up to you. But from here, you then get to use your Hordebreaker. You then move on to a central target. From there, your remaining attacks in the round, as well as your action surge or 2-weapon fighting if you're going to use it, those attacks are going to be the ones that you use your sweeping attack on. You then sweep across to the main target in the center, and any damage that you want to apply to either character on the flank is done through your main attacks, and then the center character takes all the additional damage from Hex and the sweeping ability. So let's assume for argument's sake that you've got a human character with 18 dexterity and you did pick the dual wielder feat. So because all of these attacks are going to be critical hits because you're on your surprise round, it's going to be rapier damage doubled, so that's 2d8. It's going to be sneak attack damage doubled, so that's going to be 4d6, and you'll add your ability modifier, which will be 4 in this instance. After your initial strike, you'll get your Hordebreaker attack. This has to be used against an adjacent target, which will probably be the center target. You'll get 2d8 damage for your rapier, again additional 4 points of damage for your ability score, and an additional 2d6 points of damage for your hunter's mark. If one flanking target is still standing, then continue to go for that. Pretty much always go for the painted target and sweep across to deal damage to the center guy with the hex on. In many instances, you'll probably find that the sweeping attack is dealing more damage than the actual main attack on your initial target. The superiority dice gets 2d8, and then the hunter's mark will also get an additional 2d6. This is anywhere between 4 to 28 damage, as opposed to your normal attack, which is giving you somewhere between 6 and 20. So if you're going for a ranged assassin, there's going to be a couple of minor changes you're going to make to this build. First and foremost, you're going to get the archery fighting style. That's a no-brainer. Second of all, you're going to want to go for the Colossus Slayer instead of the Hordebreaker for your ranger archetype. And as far as your fighter levels go, you're going to want the maneuvering attack. That's actually going to be quite an important piece of this build. Even though you're not getting as many attacks as the melee variant, you are actually getting quality over quantity, and it's just as respectable in the damage output. Another thing that makes the ranged attack variant preferable over the melee attack variant is 1, you have the advantage of not being in melee combat, and 2, you also have the advantage of not having to go through the initial setup before the surprise round. You can just get straight on and do it. Your bonus action is going to set up your hunter's mark. Then you're just going to fire off as many sharpshooter arrows as you can. Make sure you take the penalty of -5 in order to get the +10 damage, and be sure to really pump that sneak attack damage and hunter's mark damage up as much as you can in the first hit. This is going to more than likely allow Colossus Slayer to proc on your remaining 2 attacks. Obviously, one of those attacks is going to come from your action surge, but the reason you want to use that is because those numbers are going to be improved by the assassinate ability. Again, alert is still one of your best friends in this scenario, because if you can go first after the surprise round, when your first official round starts with that extra initiative, you're still acting before they act, and thus you're still getting the advantage. So it's again worth taking the penalty from sharpshooter and then adding the +10 bonus to damage on all your attacks that you can get. Totally worth it. Really high chance of getting a hit or even a critical hit with those multiple rolls, so it's definitely worth going for. So now we're going to run some numbers. So let's use our good old dexterous human as our initial example. Your hex target is going to be absolutely beasted, I'm telling you. You've got your maneuvering attack, or whichever battle maneuver you choose to use, that's going to be 2d8 damage. You've got your longbow, that's going to be 2d8 damage. You've got your hunter's mark, that's going to be 2d6 damage. You've got your sneak attack, which is going to be 4d6 damage. And you've got your dex and your sharpshooter, which is going to be 14 damage. And that's going to give you anywhere from 24 all the way up to a staggering 82 damage. If by some absolute miracle your target is still standing, you can start with your second attack. From here it's going to be your Battlemaster maneuver again, whichever one you choose to use, 2 to 16 damage, that's 2d8. Again, you've got your longbow, 2d8. You've got your Colossus Slayer now, and there's a very good chance you will have that to use. So another 2d8, your Hunter's Mark, another 2d6, and again another 14 damage just from your Sharpshooter feat and your ability score modifier. This will give you anywhere between 22 to 74 damage, and you've got an action surge to do it all over again if you so desire. So you put all three of those together and you're looking at anywhere between 68 at the very minimum to an enormous 230 damage. Now, as I mentioned before, you can pretty much have any battle maneuver that you want, but I really think you want to go for maneuvering attack. Because what's going to happen with any luck is you're going to be the one going first with your alert feat. So you're going to have hopefully the highest initiative. In which case you'll be able to add that additional damage from your battle maneuver, but you'll also then be able to place your teammates in advantageous positions where they can then take full advantage of all of their abilities. So it's definitely worth doing. So what you're in essence doing is not just getting the best advantage for yourself, but also for your entire party.
Well, and one time broken up, really such a shame. But why not take a chance? Everything's a game.
As I said before, it's easy for me to put the class down and just point out its flaws, but it's not quite so easy to actually do something about it and make it a little better. So I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed this and that perhaps you've got something out of it that you can use. Just as a little side note, just to clear up any confusion that you guys may or may not have, I've been using the term Hex and Hunter's Mark interchangeably. Well, when they're basically the same spell, and they essentially do the same thing, except for a few minor differences, I mean, you guys are smart enough to know the difference. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. I really don't need to explain this, but, you know, for those people who are just a bit like, oh, then there you go. That one was for you. But all that aside, hopefully you did enjoy this video, and if you did, I would really appreciate you putting a like on it. If you have any comments, if you think you can improve this build, then by all means let me know. I'll probably do a follow-up if you can find something better. If you like the content and you're not already subscribed to the channel, well, the subscription bar is just a click away. It doesn't cost you a thing, so make sure you click on it so that you can be updated every time something new pops up on the channel. And also feel free to share it about on your social media platforms or whatever to people who you think would actually enjoy or benefit from it. And with all that being said, I will see you guys next time at the gaming table with your killer assassin builds.